You know Gray Bar for electrical parts, but there's one more thing you may not be thinking of us for that can help maximize your next project's total value. Our pre-project planning services are designed to help you win the bid, save on labor costs, and keep your installers productive across your entire build. The sooner you call us, the better. Because when we're there from the beginning, we can anticipate your needs and help you solve problems before they become problems. Yep, Gray Bar does that.
It's a 4th of July week edition of the Show Before the Show podcast, and we're recording this on the 4th of July, but by the time you hear it, it's going to be the 5th of July, so we'll keep the patriotism references to a minimum then.
But those fireworks last night, though.
They were tremendous, weren't they?
They were so good. All of the colors.
I
won't mention them because you guys saw them too.
Explosions,
so many different colors.
Colors everywhere. It was crazy. So happy 4th of July, everybody. Welcome into this week's episode of the Show Before the Show podcast from MILB.com. My name is Tyler Mon. Sam Dykstra is in New York City at a deserted office at MILB headquarters, MILB.com headquarters at Chelsea Market today for episode 167.
Yeah, well, just the whole MLB Advanced Media office is kind of flushed out in terms of people. But I'm here. Ben is here. You'll hear from Ben later. All of our night staff will be here later. A lot of different people are working from home and stuff. But the MILB machine continues to turn every day of the summer, regardless.
We roll along.
Yeah.
As always.
If there are minor league baseball games, we'll be there. And there are always minor league baseball games between April and mid-September.
Bringing the news to you. Before we get into this week's episode of the Show Before the Show, thanks for tuning in wherever you found us on Apple Podcasts, at Google Play, at MILB.com/podcast. You can catch up on all of our old episodes. You can give us a rating and a review and a subscription on your podcast service if you are so kind. And you can get in touch with the show, podcast at MILB.com. Sam is on Twitter at Sam Dykstra, MILB. I am at Tyler Mon. Let us know your questions, your thoughts, your comments. We heard from a listener yesterday who had an interesting perspective on the show, in that listening to us and then going to games, he's kind of learned how to watch things, not from us obviously, but hearing from players and stuff, learning how to watch games in a different context, which is really neat. It was at Bill Goes Deep, and Bill listened to our interview with Ryan Bollinger in the New York Yankees organization, Ryan, who was called up to the big leagues, and said he went and saw Ryan pitch after that and said he had a whole different appreciation for his work, which is pretty cool. Ryan had that crazy story playing all over the world and then getting called up to the major leagues, and so that was really neat. So you can get in touch. You can be like Bill and get in touch with the show. How about that?
Yeah, we assume his name is Bill. His username is also Bill Goes Deep.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we appreciate Bill, if that is your real name.
If his name is like Kevin, I'd be confused.
That would be true. But yeah, no, it's always great to hear from folks who say, I heard about this guy on your show and then I saw him play a game. Or
that's pretty cool.
The Futures game is coming up. I think rosters are coming out on Friday. You'll hear a lot, or you'll be able to watch on TV a lot of the names we've been talking about for weeks and months, and some of whom I'm sure will have been on the show. I think Peter Alonso has already confirmed that he's going to the Futures game. Hunter Green, who we've talked about for a while, he's confirmed he's going to the Futures game in D.C. I will be there. We'll have some interviews that we'll use for the podcast from that event in Washington. We don't just do this to get some guys to talk for a little bit. These are guys you are going to hear about consistently going forward for years to come. Obviously, they're just getting their career started, so always appreciate people reaching out, and please continue to do so through all the variety of methods that Tyler just listed.
You heard it here first. Peter Alonso, Hunter Green, and Sam Dykstra are all headed to the Futures game.
One of these things is most definitely not like the other. Yeah,
Washington. Well, let's get started on three strikes for this week's episode of the Show Before the Show. We are going to kick things off. We've been doing our system grades through the first half of the 2018 campaign, midseason grades for divisions all across the major leagues, and we had a host of writers take a division each. And Sam, I'll let you kind of kick it off and give us the rundown on the division grades so far this season. I'll dive into the National League West, and we'll talk a little bit about that here in a moment. But give me just sort of a rundown of what the consensus has been. I guess not really consensus because everybody's getting a different grade, but what have been the things that have stood out about this series so far?
Yeah, so just giving you a rundown real fast of who did all the work for this, because this was most definitely a team effort. And as kind of the point man on this, I appreciated the work everybody did for this. So I covered the AL East. Chris Tripodi had the AL Central. Our friend Josh Jackson had the AL West. Everybody in this group is our friend. I shouldn't just single out Josh, but hello, Josh.
Hello, Josh.
Andrew Batafarano had the NL East. Kelsey Hannigan had the NL Central, and you, Tyler, had the NL West. Before the season begins, we always do a farm system rankings. We do that based on offensive players, on pitchers, on under 21 talent, and then overall. This is kind of touching base on that. We're not going to re-rank every system right now, but we will look at each of them at an individual basis, kind of see how things have gone here through the first 3 months of the season. The All-Star breaks are past us in the minor leagues. The All-Star break is ahead of us in the major leagues. This is pretty clearly the midpoint of the 2018 campaign. Good time to see, what systems seem like they're really pushing their talent, really developing them well over the first 3 months. Some of them, not going so great. At least, it's only a half season, so plenty of time to turn things around. But it's very clear that some systems have done better than others in 2018. And we also toss in, how the affiliates are doing. We pay attention to the minor leagues. We're going to care a little bit more than some other places about how, the AAA, AA, Class A Advanced, Class A Full Season, and now the short season teams are kind of combining into one. So with all that kind of laid down, all that groundwork discussed here, I'll move into the AL East because that was the system I had. Looking at the AL East, there is a lot to like here. The two teams I gave the highest grades to, which were A-minuses, I gave A-minuses to the Tampa Bay Rays and the Toronto Blue Jays. Blue Jays, as much as we've talked about Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and he's still out right now with a knee injury, although he seems to be well on track to return here soon enough. He kind of obscures everything else that's happened in that system this year. And, the Jays get plenty of points for developing Vlad and allowing him to be so successful at AA, pushing him to AA at 19 and letting him take off the way he did. But lots of other things to like here. Bo Bichette pretty much solidified his place as a top 10 prospect. He's also there at AA New Hampshire. Danny Jansen is kind of creeping into that top 100 discussion. He's become one of the game's best catching prospects. Had a breakout year last year with the bat, climbing 3 levels. This year he's only been at AAA Buffalo, but continuing to show a strong bat and strong defensive work behind the plate. He's definitely looking like the future of the catching position north of the border. Kevin Smith is one of the breakout prospects of the year for me. I believe he was a 4th-round pick last year out of Maryland. I got to talk to him earlier in the week. He was named the Florida State League Player of the Week. That's the 3rd time he's been named a Player of the Week. He started out this year at Class A Lansing, has put together as of right now, so as of Wednesday, 332 average and 967 OPS between those two spots, showing some good power too with 13 home runs, also stealing 15 bases. Just a really polished all-around resume. Some other stuff that's it drags it down to an A- because Anthony Alford, it hasn't quite taken off with Buffalo in the way we would have hoped. Nate Pearson took a line drive off his forearm and has been injured. So it's not quite at that A level for the Jays, but still a lot to like there beyond just Vlad, which is good. And Tampa Bay Rays, they get an A- as well because of what I mentioned before with the affiliates. They have by far and away the best winning percentage amongst the 30 farm systems. At the time I wrote this, they had a .582 winning percentage. Now, and that was second place were the Astros at .556. So there was quite a line of demarcation there between the Rays and number 2 with the Astros. They've brought guys to the majors. Willie Adames and Jake Bauers finally made their major league debuts after spending all of last year at AAA Durham. Bauers has looked especially good these first couple weeks with the Rays. Brendan McKay, is kind of plugging along. He's expected to only miss 3 weeks with an oblique injury right now, but he's been successful on both sides as they continue to try to make him a two-way player. Jesus Sanchez, Lucius Fox have been really exciting for Class A Advanced Charlotte. Nathaniel Lowe and Brandon Lau. I think that's how you talked to him, right?
Yeah.
Brandon Lau.
He introduced himself on the phone as Brandon Lau.
Right.
I thought was
so they're not related. Both spell their name Lowe, but have been two of the best hitters in the minors. Catcher Ronaldo Hernandez, another real breakout star there at Class A Bowling Green, used to be kind of a defensive threat almost exclusively. Now has done both offensively and defensively. And Wander Franco, they pushed to the Appalachian League at just 17, and he's holding his own there for Princeton. So again, a lot to like in that Rays system, which is, I feel like, is something we've said for a while now. Kind of at the other end of the spectrum, the Red Sox, I think, were the only system we gave a straight F to. That sounds obviously harsh, and I get that. But if we're looking at this system objectively through the first half of the season, to say it's been anything but a failure, it would be almost too kind. Michael Chavis was suspended for 80 games. He just returned for a Class A short season lull after a PED suspension. Jay Groom hasn't pitched at all. He underwent Tommy John surgery in May. Tanner Houck, their first rounder last year, at the time I wrote this, had the highest whip in the Carolina League at 1.70. Brian Mata has really struggled with his control. Sam Travis, they were kind of hoping would be kind of a first base and outfield threat. Also somebody who could hit left-handed pitching, being a right-hand slugger. That hasn't come to fruition, so they ended up having to trade for Steve Pearce to kind of fill that role at the major league level. There have been some success stories. Jalen Beeks was that guy for a lot of the first half. I really liked what I saw out of him in terms of racking up strikeouts at AAA Pawtucket, but they called him up for his major league debut. He got shellacked. Whether that's going to come again, another second major league look for him is tough to see at this point with Boston. They've experienced injuries already with their 2018 picks. Tristan Cassis is out with a thumb injury. Nick Decker is out with a wrist injury. Those are their first and second round picks this year. You don't want to take away points for injuries. Injuries are luck based sometimes. I know Cassis hurt his thumb diving for a ball. That's tough to say. But when you add with all the the lack of success stories, and put in with the fact that when I wrote this, they had the worst collective winning percentage among the 30 farm systems at 429. There's just not been a lot to really point to with the Red Sox system so far. And they're going to be major players at the trade deadline. They've already made that trade for Pierce, like I said, sending away 2016 10th rounder Santiago Espinal for Pierce. That's good that they can turn a 10th rounder into a major league talent. But trying to find legit pieces that they're going to try to turn into, major league ready talent is going to be kind of difficult as we get towards the end of this month. Be interested to see what they can do on the trade market. Hopefully some of these guys kind of turn it around now that Chavis is playing again. Potentially he could be a success story here in the second half. But I couldn't get into even the D range with the Red Sox here through these first 3 months.
Yeah, there are some systems that just don't have a whole lot to hang hats on so far this season. In the National League West, which is the division that I had, the San Francisco Giants are kind of that group, and not entirely surprising. We've discussed on the show before, the Giants don't really have the stomach right now for a rebuild, while they have Madison Bumgarner and Buster Posey entering kind of perhaps the latter stages of their Giants careers. Giants ownership really just wants to retool to major league level and do what they can to compete up there. So there's not a whole lot in that system, and of the guys in that system, nobody's really having that great of a year. We have seen some decent stuff up at the higher levels. Chris Shaw and Steven Dugar have put together pretty good years at AAA Sacramento, but Heliot Ramos, who is the top prospect in that organization, he's at Class A Augusta and still pretty young for the level, and has put together some good games here and there, but consistency-wise just hasn't been there. Tyler Beatty continues to struggle at AAA with Sacramento again this year. Just can't really solve that level for whatever reason, and has, in his very limited major league time, has struggled there as well. A couple of bright sides on the pitching side in Richmond at the AA level: Sean Anderson and Jason Barr, who have been pretty good for that team, but a D for the San Francisco Giants, who don't have a whole lot in that system and haven't really seen much from the guys that they do have in that system. The Arizona Diamondbacks somewhat similar in the way that they've really focused on the major league product and not building so much from the system in recent years. John Duplantier, their top prospect and the only top 100 talent in that organization, got started late, put together 7 good starts, but back on the disabled list, had a 2.52 ERA and 51 strikeouts in 35 and 2/3 innings, but didn't make his debut until April 21st. He hasn't pitched since May 27th. So that's another issue. And we talked with John on the podcast, and him being a Rice guy, a Rice University product, he said one of the things that he really wanted to do is prove the reputation wrong of Rice products not being able to stay healthy as pitchers in professional baseball. And this season, unfortunately for the D-backs, that hasn't been the case for John. He's not been able to stay on the mound. A lot of the talent in that organization is kind of concentrated at Visalia, the Class A advanced level club in the D-back system. 4 of the top 5 position player prospects in that organization are in that offense, but they rank 3rd from the bottom in the California League in terms of team batting average. Pavin Smith is there, 2017 first rounder. He hasn't really blown the doors off this season, so a C- for the Arizona Diamondbacks. The Colorado Rockies, a C. The Rockies have gotten really impressive starts this season from Peter Lambert, their pitching prospect who has already been promoted to AAA Albuquerque, and from shortstop Brendan Rodgers, who I don't think is far behind him. Brendan Rodgers was named an Eastern League All-Star and has been terrific so far this season. He started the year with Garrett Hampson as his middle infield partner. Garrett Hampson is already up at AAA, and I would think is probably going to get a look in the major leagues before too long. But Colton Welker, the third base prospect, who really saw his star climb a lot toward the end of last season and early on this season. Started hot this year with Class A Advanced Lancaster, and you kind of felt like, oh man, that's the type of place where somebody like Colton Welker is really just going to go off offensively. And the numbers have been good, but they haven't been eye-popping necessarily. 9 homers, a 311 average, and 848 OPS, and those are very good numbers, but when you think, well, he's hitting in the most offensively friendly environment in all minor league baseball, you kind of would have expected a little bit more. Now, granted, Colton Welker is still 20 years old. It was a 4th-round pick back in 2016, so there's still a whole lot of time there for him, even at that level, to be among the regulars and the average age there. Riley Pint, though, is one of the big stories in that system, the former 3rd overall pick. It has not been a good year for Riley Pint. Last year was a struggle for Riley Pint, and this year has been a baffling one. Last year combined over 22 starts with Class A Asheville, a 2-11 record and a 5.42 ERA. This year, he took the ball for Asheville on opening day against Delmarva on April 8th. A third of an inning, 2 hits, 3 runs, all earned, 2 walks, no strikeouts. He was lifted after recording just 1 out, and we did not see Riley Pint again on a mound until June 16th when he resurfaced with Boise, Class A short season in the Northwest League. And in 2 starts with Boise, numbers decent in some respects, an ERA of 1.29, only gave up 2 runs on 4 hits, 1 run earned over 7 innings of work, but he walked 8 and struck out 7. That's been the big issue, has been his command. Last year in total, he walked 59 against 79 strikeouts in 93 innings. 2 starts with Boise. He has since been removed from that roster. Don't really know where he is. He still, as of right now, is listed on MILB.com as being active, but I know there was a Boise sports writer last week who tweeted that he had been told by a source with the Hawks that Riley Pint was no longer on that roster. So that's a tough situation for the Rockies in trying to develop somebody who had as high of hopes as anybody who's come into that system pitching-wise, maybe in franchise history, especially with the notoriety that he came into the organization with, from Jeff Passan's book, The Arm, and the fastball that touched 103 miles an hour when he was 17 and all that. So that's where Riley Pint is right now. Los Angeles Dodgers. It seems like everybody in that system who you were kind of expecting to take a step forward has taken a step forward. Not a whole lot left for Alex Verdugo to prove. There just isn't a spot right him at the major league level. Keibert Ruiz, the catcher, is just 19 years old in Double-A and has been terrific. And the outfielder, Yusniel Diaz, has been kind of the same way on that same team. Dennis Santana has been really good on the mound. He had 8 starts with Double-A Tulsa to start the year and then jumped up to Triple-A and then made his major league debut early on in June. He was actually better at Triple-A than he was at Double-A, so he's been really good, although he has been on the disabled list since June, early June, after making his big league debut, but really good numbers to start the season. Mitchell White is the top pitching prospect in that organization. He's kind of one of the reasons why they got docked to letter grade. He's really struggled. An ERA after 11 starts of 6.33 for Mitchell White. So one of the few down stories, but a down story there. And then there's the San Diego Padres, and the Padres are one of the organizations that kind of puts everybody else to shame right now, and not just in the National League West, but really throughout all of baseball. The Padres are, I think, the only A that we gave in the National League, and they have everything going for them right now, especially at Double-A San Antonio. Fernando Tatis Jr. there was slow during April and then just broke out to crush everything in Double-A in May and June. He's 19 years old. Luis Arias is one step up the ladder at Triple-A El Paso. He's been really good and is also still very young for the level, as he has been at pretty much every stop throughout his career. Top pitching prospect Mackenzie Gore has struggled so far this season for Fort Wayne, but there are a whole lot of other pitching prospects who have succeeded everywhere they've been throughout the system. Even Cal Quantrill, who is maybe the one who has struggled most outside of Mackenzie Gore, his numbers aren't bad by any stretch of the imagination. But you look at some of the other guys. Jacob Nix has dealt with some health stuff, but Jacob Nix has been terrific all year long. Chris Paddock has been unbelievable for Class A Advanced Lake Elsinore. 83 strikeouts to 4 walks through 52 and a third innings by the point that we put out these letter grades. So the Padres, just a whole lot going on in that system that you got to be really excited about if you're a San Diego fan. So you can check out the rankings. They are up, or the grades. They're up at MILB.com right now for the American League and the National League. And a lengthy strike one, but strike one behind us. Strike two this week, Sam. All-star rosters announced all over the place. AAA all-star rosters, we might talk about a little bit later on in the show. AAA is always kind of a weird all-star alignment because it's some guys who have already been in the major leagues and some prospects. But like if you're a prospect having a great year, you're probably in the big leagues already. So AAA is kind of strange. But the AA Eastern League, a very interesting assortment of stars on that roster. A lot of the names that you expected to be there: Vlad Guerrero Jr., Bo Bichette, Brendan Rodgers, Bo Burrows, Ke'Bryan Hayes, and Tim Tebow of the Binghamton Rumble Ponies is on that roster as well. And first, just kind of give me your overall impressions about this group. But Tim Tebow being somebody who's been selected, his numbers through 72 games, the 30-year-old left fielder, a 265 average, 335 on base percentage, 394 slugging percentage, did put together a very solid June. But kind of give me your impressions of the Eastern League All-Stars, and then let's talk about this Tebow selection a little bit.
Yeah, so I'll save the Tebow thing for a little bit later. But it is kind of cool how loaded this Eastern League. There's two division rosters here. There's the Eastern Division and the Western Division, and the fact that there were 7 top 100 prospects picked to one All-Star game is pretty neat, I'll say. And I think that is kind of unique to what Double-A is. You mentioned everything that goes on at Triple-A, and if you do catch fire, you're probably getting pushed to the majors. Double-A, it's a little different. You kind of want your younger, more talented players to really get comfortable there, to really show themselves, prove themselves. And that's what we've seen with Vlad Guerrero Jr. We've been calling for him to be called up forever before the injury. And, they wanted him to just at least have, a solid 2.5 months there. So he stuck there. Same thing with Bo Bichette. I had somebody ask me the other day, is there a point to Brendan Rodgers still being in Hartford? He was there for half a year last year. He's been really good through half a year this year. Why is he still around? I think it's because of the All-Star game in Trenton next week. I think they, wanted him to get his accolades, show off his stuff a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised to see him move up to Albuquerque after that. Peter Lambert, as you mentioned, Tyler, he's already been moved up to Albuquerque once he got his name added to this list. So it is kind of a unique situation, and just the fact that the Eastern League is this loaded will make for a lot of fun next week at that game in Trenton. It's to be held July 11th, so exactly 1 week from when we're recording this. I will be there. Kelsey Hennigan will be there. I'm going to try to get a podcast interview with one of the Eastern League All-Stars. We'll determine that next week, so tune into this space again. And Kelsey will probably be covering the Tebow issue along with a couple other things. She'll be doing game work, and I'll be getting a tool shed out of it. But in terms of one singular All-Star game, this is one of the most loaded we've seen so far this summer. And that again, that does kind of come from the fact that there are two divisions that they're picking from here. Talent usually, cream rises to the top. You're always going to pick the more talented players anyways. And they're going to be the ones who perform over a half season. But to see that these two rosters loaded in the way they are is really fun and really exciting, and will be a very fun game to watch, even if it's just one exhibition game.
Yeah, the Double-A squads are always the most interesting ones. The Tebow thing stands out because you look at the numbers, and they're not all-star numbers. The June numbers for Tim Tebow were pretty good. 301 average, 338 on base percentage, 425 slugging percentage, 1 home run, 11 runs batted in, 22 strikeouts over his 24 games against just 3 walks. But, an All-Star game is a showcase event. It's a game which you want people to turn out. I don't have any problem with this selection. I think most people look at it and think, well, numbers-wise, he doesn't deserve to be there, and he's taking away a spot from somebody who does. I don't think really at the AA level, for the most part, I think the guys would rather have the days off, to be perfectly honest with you. And I think it's cool for the Eastern League that they're going to get a chance to show off Tim Tebow in their showcase event. How much this really projects what we can expect for the rest of the season for him, I'm not entirely sure, because the June numbers on their face look good. When you dig a little bit deeper, maybe not so much. He did have 22 hits and 73 at-bats. 7 of those hits went for extra bases, but 6 were doubles, no triples, just the 1 homer. Again, the strikeout number is really high. He's gotten progressively better as the season has gone along from April to May and May to June. If that progression continues, yeah, maybe there's a chance we see Tim Tebow in Las Vegas at some point. But I don't think that this necessarily is, man, Tim Tebow's really getting it figured out. An all-star selection. He had a good June. I think it's fine as far as the all-star selection goes because of what an all-star game is. But I don't necessarily, I think the discussion around Tim Tebow's recent surge maybe is a little bit overblown in terms of what it means for the long-term trajectory in this season, because we've already heard, the Mets should call him up. If nothing else, it'll fill some seats. Yeah, maybe. But, if you're a Mets fan who's frustrated with the Mets right now, is Tim Tebow really going to turn you out? I don't think so. Obviously, there's a lot of people who are going to show up just to see Tim Tebow because that's the aura that surrounds him. And we've seen, crowds, people have gone to games from Florida, planned trips to go see him in Hartford in the Eastern League, that type of stuff. But it is definitely an interesting selection. He's the most unique story in the minor leagues in arguably a lot of ways, and probably the most unique all-star in the minor leagues.
Yeah, and when I think the first outcry on Twitter, or maybe just basically in society these days, is to say like, well, obviously he's taking the place of somebody. And so I dug a little bit into, okay, he's one of 6 Eastern League, Eastern Division outfield all-stars, which is a pretty deep group as it is. There's only a handful of teams in the Eastern Division to begin with, and the fact that they were taking 6 outfilders from that group. Yeah. There are 6 teams. They're New Hampshire, Trenton, Hartford, Binghamton, Reading, and Portland. So there are a lot of things that have to go into play here. He is the only Binghamton outfielder on the roster, so maybe they go for a little bit of representation there. I get that. There are 2 Hartford guys, a Reading guy, a New Hampshire guy, and a Trenton guy. The most notable among the bunch might be Sam Hilliard in terms of outfielders. The infield for the Eastern Division is loaded. Bo Bichette's there, Kevin Biggio's there, Vlad Guerrero Jr., Josh Ockamy, Brendan Rodgers. That's absolutely loaded. Outfield's kind of thin. If I could find somebody who should feel slighted that he's not there, it might be Harold Ramirez of AA New Hampshire. This is his 3rd straight season in the Eastern League. He's batting .294 with a .351 OBP and a .420 slugging percentage, hitting 5 homers, 5 stolen bases in 66 games. Again, not numbers that are going to bowl you over necessarily, but he's got a 114 WRC plus compared to 105 for Tebow. We're kind of haggling at that point. I think for a lot of the voters who are picking these Eastern League division teams, who's going to get you more excited for an Eastern League All-Star game? Is it going to be the inclusion of Tim Tebow or Harold Ramirez, who has been here 3 times and is trying to make his second Eastern League All-Star team in 3 seasons? You kind of get where I'm getting at here. Yeah. In a vacuum, should Tim Tebow be any kind of all-star? Probably not. Should he be a major leaguer at the end of the year? Probably not. But these decisions aren't made in vacuums. If there was a guy who had a WRC plus of 150 who got left off the roster or something like that, I would totally, this would be strike one. We'd be blasting this guy's name, tagging him in our tweets, all that kind of stuff. But when you really dig down into it, Is the snub that big? Not really. Nobody's going to lose sleep over this. And the event does become more exciting because Tebow is going to be there. And at the end of the day, these are exhibitions. That's what really counts anyways. Imagine if they had a fan vote. Who should be the last guy on this roster?
Like how Yao Ming still leads the NBA in voting 8 years after he retired.
Right. Yeah. Stuff like that. That these things get affected. We shouldn't really lose sleep over it. Good for Tebow for even putting himself into the discussion, because he is in the discussion. Let's get one thing clear. These are big rosters that need to be filled, and he's put himself into that conversation with the way he's played. He has become an above league average bat in the Eastern League, which is a testament to the work he has put in. He's on the older side for a prospect. Wouldn't put him on any prospect list, anything like that. It strikes out way too much for that. But he's hit well enough in June, and he's gotten hot at the right time for him to be placed here. And I'm really interested to see what the circus is going to be like next week in Trenton. This is not, SEC territory anymore. He's not playing in the Florida State League, where everybody's getting excited. Yeah, people might travel for it, but are the people of Jersey as excited to see Tim Tebow as others? I don't know. We'll find out next week.
Jets fans, you get a chance to see him.
There is Jets fans, yeah.
Strike 3 this week, Sam. The first half is behind us all across minor league baseball. Who's your breakout prospect of the first half? There are so many guys who had great seasons among ranked prospects, all that type of stuff. We're kind of going more under the radar with this, and I gave you a name before we got started, and I'm actually going to change mine, of course, because that's what I do. But who's yours?
Well, we'll keep that name under wraps then, I guess. I've got 2. The one that I wrote about I did a tool shed last week about kind of my picks for Milbies at the beginning, at the midpoint of the season. Like I said, this is the midpoint of the season. We might as well delve into some of the stuff that we talk about at the end of the year. Let's kind of check in on it now. Won't go into the other categories. A lot of it is stuff we've already talked about tons of times over. But for breakout prospects, I picked Chris Paddock, who you mentioned when you talked about the Padres grades being an A. He has been, a very successful development story for them in the first half. Just to reiterate, 83 strikeouts and only 4 walks in 52 1/3 innings is absolutely nuts. The fact that he has a 2.24 ERA in the Cal League is absolutely crazy. 0.90 WHIP. But what makes him kind of a breakout prospect is he didn't pitch at all in 2017. A lot of people really believed in him. He's put up dominant numbers everywhere he's gone in the minors. He was in the Marlins system, drafted in the 8th round back in 2015. But 2017 underwent Tommy John surgery that knocked him out. How was he going to be able to come back? What was the rehab process, the lengthy recovery process going to do to his pitches? As it's turned out, he's better than ever, basically. And he's become a top 100, I would say, candidate. MLB.com is going to update their top 100, I believe, at the end of this month. That's usually when they do that. I would love to see his name kind of get included in that. Actually, I think he already is. I take that back. He started out the year outside the top 100. Now he's at number 96. He's now the number 8 prospect in that system. He started out the year at number 23 because of those health questions. So these are the type of jumps you'd like to see out of breakout prospects. We set last year, our pick was Ronald Acuna. Paddock is kind of doing something similar here, at least in terms of health. But one other guy I want to touch on real fast, who kind of underwent a similar issue, Jonathan Loaisiga in the Yankee system. He's right now with the Yankees. He's up in the major leagues. Actually, he just got optioned back yesterday, but he has made 4 major league starts this year, 3.00 ERA, 21 strikeouts in 18 innings for the Yanks. Really kind of solidified and held over their major league rotation at a time where they needed that. They had a hole, and he filled it gracefully. But he started out the year at Class A Advanced Tampa, only threw 32 2/3 innings last year because he himself was coming back from Tommy John surgery. He's showed the Yankees enough for them to protect him on the 40-man because he was Rule 5 eligible. This year, not only has he climbed, from Class A advanced to Double A Trenton to the majors, but has pretty much dominated everywhere he's gone. They optioned him back to Triple A Scranton, so that'll be his 4th team of the year already. But in 10 starts in the minors, he's put a 3.00 ERA, 58 strikeouts, only 4 walks. So if you catch a kind of theme here, I'm a big fan of guys who fill up the strike zone, but also do so while getting plenty of strikeouts. And for both of these guys to do that after significant missed time is really special and really something to see, and can't wait to see what they do over the second half. Loaiziga, I expect him to get plenty of more major league looks, even if he was just optioned back this week. Paddock, are they going to move him up to Double A San Antonio and really test him, which is funny to say, test somebody outside the California League, or just how far can you take that K to walk ratio? I'll be really excited to see that in the second half. So as we kind of sit here at the midpoint of the year, those are my 2 breakout picks. Tons of time left, chances for other guys to break out here in the second half.
Yeah, that is definitely true. I was going to go with Keegan Aiken of the Baltimore Orioles organization, who's had a terrific start to the season, was named an Eastern League All-Star. But a guy who popped into my head as we were talking about systems and grades and all that type of stuff, Austin Allen, the catching prospect and first base prospect in the San Diego Padres organization. Offensively, there were not really as many questions about Austin Allen at all when he came out of school. He was the highest drafted player ever to come out of Florida Tech. He was a 4th-round pick back in 2015. This year, 305, 364, 547 has been his slash line with Double A San Antonio in the Texas League through 73 games. He's hit 15 homers so far this year. But the Padres and people have kind of always questioned whether or not he would be able to stay behind home plate. He's a big-bodied guy. He's listed at 6'2", 220. It's difficult to kind of quantify defensively just how guys have been, because defensive numbers don't really tell the story nearly as much as offensive numbers can. But the defensive numbers on Austin Allen are very good so far this season. He's got a .998 fielding percentage behind the plate. He's only made 1 error so far this season in 470 and a third innings behind the plate. And he's also thrown out 38% of potential base stealers, which is very good, especially at Double A. He's thrown out 28 of 74 runners trying to steal bases against him. So Austin Allen, I mean, that is a system that obviously has been able to graduate and develop some catchers in recent years, and a guy who has some versatility to move around. Obviously, the Padres are set for now with Eric Hosmer over at first base, but Austin Allen has some experience over there. So in that system, to be talking about somebody who came into the year at number 29 in the organization among prospect rankings, now is number 27 and is in the midst of a campaign that could push him even further up. Like, talk about the rich getting richer prospect wise. If you're the Padres right now, everybody is putting something together for you. This is a really impressive year for that system.
Yeah. The fact that we picked 2 Padres and a Yankees prospect, who we all pretty much agreed were top 5 systems coming into the year, kind of speaks to how good those systems are at developing players. And it's not just like, hey, we got this really good guy in the draft and just allowed him to be him.
Right.
They're taking injured players, they're taking lower draft picks, they're taking whatever and turning them into bona fide prospects. And it's not easy, but these are 2 of the best at doing that right now.
That development is key. Austin Allen coming into this year had thrown out 19.7% of attempted base stealers against him. This year, 37.8%. So that's the type of stuff that you talk about in systems like that. The ability to get guys to continue taking steps forward, developing maybe the more lackluster parts of their game and turning them into more complete players. And so, if you're a fan of either of those teams, the Yankees, it's about time the Yankees caught a break. Am I right? What an undervalued franchise.
Hey, you say that as if you're the one who lives in New York and is hearing that
is subjected to it constantly.
Yeah.
So that's our breakout prospect discussion for the first half, and it wraps up 3 strikes on this week's episode of the show before the show. Coming up next, the July 2nd international signing deadline is just behind us, and Sam got a chance to catch up with the 13th ranked prospect in the Texas Rangers organization, right-handed pitcher Jonathan Hernandez, newly of the Frisco Rough Riders in Double A, and talk a little bit about Jonathan's signing story out of the Dominican Republic and a whole lot more. Sam and Jonathan Hernandez from the Texas Rangers coming up next.
Joining us this week on the Show Before the Show podcast is number 13 prospect in the Texas Ranger system. Probably won't be number 13 for long. Definitely having a very strong season. We'll be moving up the rankings shortly. Is Jonathan Hernandez, now of the Double A Frisco Rough Riders. Jonathan, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Thank you. How are you doing?
Good, good. Thanks so much for doing this. So let's get a little bit into what your season has been like. You started out at Class A Advanced Down East. You get promoted to Frisco about a month ago in early June. What was that time like with Down East? You ended the year there last year, but really broke out, it felt like, this time. 2.20 ERA and 77 strikeouts in 57 and third innings. What were you able to do there in those first couple months to really get your season off to a strong start?
It was a really good experience, being there last year, knowing the league, and then coming back this year was a lot easier for me, to pitch how I need to pitch on that league, So it was a good experience being there with all the guys and, learning about each other every time and learning more about the game too.
Yeah, and how is your, in terms of your pitches, people talk up, but your velocity has kind of ticked up in the last couple of years. You're now throwing mid-90s. Your slider has been really strong and your changeup's developing well. What were you able to do pitch-wise in those first couple months in Down East that allowed you to strike out so many guys?
Just put away guy when I need it, Years before, I don't have that kind of mindset or that kind of pitches that I can put away the guys right away. I get to 2 strikes, So every time I get to 2 strikes now, I have my pitch already set, So it doesn't matter like what kind of foul ball you give me. I just saw what situation I am, and I just try to execute a very good pitch every time I'm going out.
Yeah, and let's get into what it's been like for your time in Frisco. You made 4 starts with them. What were you expecting about Double-A? And it's kind of been a rough ride a little bit for you. You got a ERA above 6, but it seemed like you kind of figured things out in your last outing, going 6 strong innings. What has been the learning curve, and what have you learned most about yourself as a pitcher so far in Double-A?
Before that, I think the biggest thing was that I was getting behind the hitters, trying to do too much, thinking too much about what this hitter is going to do, and just letting it happen. So in my last outing, I just take that out of my mind and just pitch how I know to do, And then thanks God, was a great outing for me personally, that I can bounce back from those 3 that I had before and give the team a really good chance to win the game. So I was happy with the work that I did, and I hope to look forward to the next one.
Yeah, and just to run through what you did do in that outing, you gave up only 2 runs on 3 hits and struck out 6 in 6 2/3 innings, your longest Double-A outing so far. I just want to go back to what you were saying at the start of that. And when you did get promoted to Double-A, how much are you thinking, like, this is as close as I've ever been to the majors, I'm only 2 stops away now? How much does that kind of get on you and into your kind of brain going into that debut with Frisco?
When I get here, I was like, I didn't believe it till the day that I went to pitch. Really excited to myself and really proud of myself too, to be here today. And, kind of my first outing, kind of bad outings, but I was learning about it. Each one, I was learning, take the good things that I made, and the bad things too, I was learning about each one, So picking 2 things about every game, want to make me more successful, like in the road. So I think the difference between here and Down East, I think is more maturity, Here you're going to play with grown men, so you're not going to be messing around like you're going to be there, like, oh, let me throw a fastball here, and they're going to swing it. No, like, here they're going to wait for the pitch that they want, like you are, like you say, 2 steps closer to the major league. So you're going to be here, you're going to see here a lot of prospects, like top prospects that, they are really good.
Right. Well, let's kind of take a couple steps back. One of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show this week is, July 2nd is a big day on the baseball calendar. It's when international prospects from around the world, basically outside of the U.S., Puerto Rico, and Canada, can start signing with teams, for their age 16 seasons. You're somebody who went through that process being a native of the Dominican Republic. You signed with the Rangers back in January of 2013. What do you remember about that process? What was it like? You don't go through the draft. It's not like you get taken with a pick or something like that. You have a signing bonus. You signed with the Rangers. I think it was $300,000. What was that whole process like that eventually got you to sign with the Rangers in January 2013?
Yes, you're right. Was a little tough, with a lot of I call it like this. That's how I call it. I call it a road with a lot of bumps, So you're going to be with a lot of up and downs. I went, on that kind of moment early in my career when I started, that kind of age, like 15, 16 years old, that I was throwing like 86, 88. And, everybody that I went to showcases, everybody was like 89, 93. And I was like, wow, I need to throw like them, So I was working hard every day with my dad. And, thanks God, gave me the opportunity to be playing baseball and, develop so quick. And then when I signed, I remember I would pitch like twice in a week. I remember. Yeah, twice in a week. And I was really excited, I didn't believe it. And my dad was like, yeah, you want to sign? And I was like, no, because that's a dream come true for the kids in Dominican, when they have 16 years old, they want to be a professional. And I grew up, in a baseball path. So I've been watching baseball for a long time, and I was watching all those guys play in the Winter League and getting beside my dad a lot. So, his friends playing baseball, and I was like, oh, they play in Double A, they play in the big leagues. So, that was kind of things that gave me more, every time I saw those guys, I just want to be being better every day.
Yeah, and you've mentioned your dad a couple times. We should explain to people listening right now. Your dad was is Fernando Hernandez, who still is a bullpen coach in the Dominican Winter League, somebody you work with closely. One of our writers had a good story about you and your relationship with your dad a couple months back. Andrew Bataferrano, people should look that up. But, you mentioned it was kind of a tough road because the velocity wasn't there. And like I mentioned, you signed in January. I feel like guys, once the gates open, they're signing July 2. What was that process like? Was your dad doing a lot of speaking on your behalf, reaching out to teams, or what was that couple months break like, where between you knew that this was the first day you could sign, and then it took months until you could actually sign your first contract?
Well, my dad, and I have an agent at that time. So my dad and my agent, they was getting together and talking about all the offers that I have. I didn't know because they just want me to work more hard every day, and don't focus on that. That was their part. So on that kind of months that I went through, I was, getting myself more ready than I was before. The people see me when I was, my birthday is July 6th. So I went 16 in July 6, 2012. So the people was waiting, for me to, my dad more was waiting for me to, for my birthday, the 16th birthday, so he can show me more, so that people can go and interest in more. So those kind of months that I took from July to January was more to get myself ready for, for the next July 2nd. Mm-hmm. But, I got that offer before, I got a couple offers before, but my dad and me get together and decide with the Rangers.
So was it just the offer that was best at the time, or was there something the Rangers did that kind of talked you into joining at that point and not waiting for the next July 2?
No, I just like the organization, and I was waiting for somebody to give me a good offer, and I see this like a good offer, so I took it, and I just was waiting for the right moment, because I say, and then at that time I was throwing a lot, and I told my dad, hey, I just want to be a professional. I don't mind how many money they give me. I just want to be a professional, you know. So
Right.
I knew that, like, I don't knew, but my dad was telling me, you know, getting my mindset right, and he was telling me, you're going to be a great pitcher. You're going to have a good future. So let's do this, and you're going to work more hard every day and push yourself every time you're going out. And I said, yeah, I'm going to do that. So here I am today.
Right. Yeah. And jumping from where you were then, like you said, you were throwing 86, 88, and then now you're throwing mid 90s. When did it feel like that velocity really kicked in for you in terms of the elite gas you have now, not just the mid 90s or the lower 90s around 89, 92, whatever that some of the guys were doing when you were 16, to where you are now, throwing mid 90s pretty consistently?
Yeah, that came, I remember my first outing in 2016 in Lowey, Hickory. I was playing against Canapolis, and I was pitching, boom, boom, and I feel myself like I was touching before. I was touching 95 a couple times. And that game, I was 93, 97, and I was like, wow, like, what I have those. But every time I go into my off season, I think that's the biggest work that you can do. Work so hard in your off season. That's the preparation for now,
Mm-hmm.
for this kind of moment when you are on this kind of type seasons, like long seasons. On these times, like June, August, July, August. So the body's getting a little tired. So that's why I was so hard on my off season. And then that year, my velocity picked up. Like, I didn't know that. In spring training, I was like 91, 94. And then I get to lower, and I was like 93, 97. And I was, oh. And then next year, the same. And I was like, oh, I want to keep doing the same thing, so I can keep going up. And then, now I have a pretty good average fastball. And, I can, sometimes I play with it, like soft, hard, but sometimes I just go in hard, because that's the kind of thing that put my rhythm, going. If I try to, put that thing more slower, I don't know how to do with mechanically and other stuff. Like, when my tempo is like, my rhythm is like slow, I just need to go like boom, 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 getting quick, so my arm can go loose every time.
Right. And pivoting to one of your other pitches is the slider. I've seen people call it a wipeout slider. A lot of people think it's become a plus pitch now. How did that develop? What were you doing with that? Was it working with your dad? Was it something the Rangers did with you? How are you able to make the slider such a good pitch for you now?
Well, my dad threw a pretty good slider. So last year at home, I remember, like in November, that's kind of when I started doing my program now. So we was at a stadium, and he said like, oh, I want you to use this slider to strike out people. And I said, yeah, I have it, but, I don't know how to use it. Every time 2017, I use it, like at the end, I was getting it, but, was at the end. So what about the beginning? And last year, when I went to my off season, we was working a lot on that, and the Rangers helped me too. The pitching coaches helped me, how to throw in a good position, good location, so I can get more swinging misses. And my dad was working too hard with me in my off season, getting that slider sharp for the season.
And let's talk about two experiences you've had in the last year. One of which was, last November, you got added to the 40-man roster. As somebody who did start your career kind of choppy and waiting for offers to come, and now officially to be on a major league roster, be invited to major league spring training. What was that call like when you finally heard you were added to the 40-man last November?
Man, I remember it was like 3-something afternoon. I was in the stadium about to work out with my dad. I remember, like, I'm never going to forget that moment. It was a really good moment for me and my family. And I remember I was sitting in a chair tying my shoes, and I feel my phone is vibrating, and I was like, and then I picked up the phone and I saw, who's calling me, and I told my dad, hey, look who's calling, and we was watching that, like everybody was getting on the appointment last night and all that stuff, and he said like, well, picked up the call, you don't know what happened.
Right.
And when I picked up the call and they gave me the notice, was really excited, I kind of don't believe it. I was like, wow, I can't believe like 4 years before, I don't want thinking on being, on that. And now that happened, I was really excited, really emotional too with my dad. We was hoping to something happen. So, it was a really good moment, really good experience being on that Major League camp too, learning about all those guys, those veteran guys that are there around me.
Yeah, and one other experience you got to have before that was you got to go to the Futures game last year in Miami. I was at that game. I remember you came in, you were the last pitcher off the world team bench. Got 2 pitches in against Ryan McMahon, 2 95-mile-an-hour fastballs, got him to fly out to center, and your day was kind of done. But what was that experience like, getting the invite, getting to be put on that, kind of international stage, and seeing how you measure up against some of those guys on that Team USA team or world team or all of that? Futures games coming up soon for everybody else. But what was your experience like last year in Miami?
Well, it was really good. Being around a lot of talented guys, was really good experience. And that was another thing that I didn't believe it, that I was there until I went to the hotel and my dad arrived on the night. And then, like, we was talking in the room, and I said, like, I can't believe it. I'm here, those kind of things that I saw before on people, and I was thinking that was too far from me. They are close that I think. They are more close than what I think, So last year, I remember we was in Down East, we was taking BP, and one of those days, I was talking with the guys, like, oh, you see the guys, like, how good they look and playing for the war and the USA. And the guy was, yeah, they look good. And I was like, well, we hope somebody of those, can be there. And then a few weeks later, they tell me that I'm going there. That was a really exciting moment.
You kind of called your shot in a way.
Yeah, I was in shock. Man. When they told me that, I was like, no, I'm not going there. And I called my dad, and he was like, no, you don't go in there. And I said, yeah, I'm going. And I said, okay, I'm going to buy you a flight and the night before so you can go there and watch me. He said, okay, when you got a flight, I'm going to see if that's true. I was okay. When I bought the flight, he said, but the thing is true. And I said, yeah, I told you.
You don't buy
that was a really good experience.
Plane tickets. Yeah, no, that's a good way of doing it. All right, Jonathan, we'll send you on your way with this one. Just to kind of close on this note, you brought up your dad a ton. You just did it again there. For those who don't know, your dad pitched an inning in the third over 2 games with the Detroit Tigers in 1997, the year after you were born. Have you ever talked to him about, or is there any kind of like bragging rights on the line? You are on a major league roster technically with the 40-man now. You're 2 stops away of the potential of you pitching more in the major leagues than he did. Have you guys ever kind of dreamed about that or joked about that, of who would have the longer career?
Yeah, man, we're always joking around. Like, you see my dad and me, and you're going to say like, oh, you are your dad and you're his dad or his son. Like, the people don't know a lot because we were joking a lot. We're joking a lot every time we get together, laughing and all the stuff. And all the time I'm telling him like, okay, I'm going to be better than you. He said, yeah, that's what I want,
Right.
That's a great moment that you have with your dad, and see, he told me sometimes like, I just want you to be better than me. I just was exactly, I don't know exactly, like 2 weeks on the big leagues, a month, I don't know. We never talk about it a lot, because he don't wanna. Like, we don't talk about that because he has better move than dogs, So he always telling me like, I just want you to be a successful pitcher, more than what I was. So I want you to, to encourage and being better than me and stay on the big leagues more longer than I did. And I said, that's what I want. Been there for a long time.
Right.
Like those guys did it.
Right. Well, like we said, you're 2 stops away now, and it's, being on the 40-man, you're just one kind of roster move away from making that happen. So, Jonathan Hernandez, thanks so much for joining us, and good luck the rest of the way in Frisco or wherever the rest of the 2018 season takes you.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Benjamin Hill joins us to discuss the business of minor league baseball and all other things. What are your 4th of July plans today, Ben?
It's to hang out with Sam Dykstra in the office. We are literally the only 2 people here. He is sitting to my left in an empty cubicle between where we sit every day.
You have a middle, like a cubicle between the 2 of you that's empty?
Yes,
Yeah.
we are in what I would call a little 6-pack of cubicles with 3 on each side. 5 are occupied. The one that is not occupied is between Sam and I. I'm hard up the wall, and Sam's on the aisle, I would say.
Yeah, I got the aisle seat.
We're pretty cramped back here. It's full capacity here at the Chelsea Market, but this is such an exciting day. We're just at our desk. There's no one here. We can talk as loud as we want. There's no one else yelling, which is key for me. I'm very easily disrupted, and we're just surrounded by all our memorabilia. Well, mostly my memorabilia. All Sam has as memorabilia is a drawer with about 450 pennies
That's not
in it.
true. I have a very decorated
Wait,
desk.
what?
Thank you.
What is the penny story?
Sam has a drawer with at least 450 pennies.
That's not.
What?
It's not 450 pennies. I take my change out. I get lunch every day, and I take my change and I put it in the thing. And I usually, the vending machines here take nickels, dimes, quarters, whatever. So, but they don't take pennies. So the pennies have just collected over 6.5 years at this job.
So you just got like a glut of. When are you going to cash those in?
Whenever I can find a Coinstar in the Chelsea area.
Yeah, so whenever Sam opens his top right drawer, it looks like it's just going to tip everything over because it's
just
weighted in the
rattles
front
around.
with just tons of pennies.
I'm going to close this so this can stop being a talking point.
Oh man, that is fantastic. It's a 4th of July coin, Sam. It's President Lincoln and all the things that go along with the
Yes,
copper
President
industry
Lincoln, who was definitely around for 4th
on
of
the
July.
4th of July.
1770.
Hey man, freedom and fighting for the cause of liberty. It's all intertwined. Get out of here with your Abraham
With
Lincoln
your
slander. All right, well, let's dive in. Ben's got a story up on the site right now, and on the road story from earlier this week about the Lake County captains. And there's kind of a cool tradition in Lake County, which people seem to find love in the Lake County front office. Tell us about this story, Ben.
Well, yeah, I wrote a story about a couple, Amy and Tim, Amy Gladeau and Tim O'Brien, who are slated to get married at the end of September. They met working for the Lake County captains, and they are the 8th couple in the last 16 years to meet in the captain's front office and get married. So my story is about them and them specifically, but kind of I wanted to hit on a broader theme, just using these 2 as an example that, we don't have official statistics, but I would say, and I think most people who work in minor league baseball would say, you are much more likely to meet a significant other at the workplace in a minor league baseball front office than most other jobs because you work so much and because your hours are different than anyone else's. You spend a lot of time with the people you work with, and you have anomalous hours that makes it hard to even see other people in the free time you do have. You make strong connections, and you never know. Romance might be in the air. So I wish that we did have the statistics. I'm going to commission a study on relationships forged within minor league baseball front offices, but I'd have to say 8 and 16 years in Lake County is a pretty good rate. And congrats to Amy and Tim, who September 29th will be united as one in the bonds of holy matrimony.
So what about their story? How did you kind of find them? How did this kind of get pointed out to you? Did you know about like the other 7 couples and you're just like, oh, there's an 8th now? Or in your visit to Lake County, how was this kind of pointed out to you?
Yeah, well, when I go on these road trips, this was the first stop on my previous road trip a couple weeks ago, and I'm always looking for stories because that's what I do when I go on the road is look for stories. So I was talking to Neil Stein, the GM, just about this and that, and just kind of probing, putting out feelers, looking for angles. And he mentioned, we have had a bunch of people get married here, and I said perfect. So I ended up talking to those two because they were the only two working right now in the front office. And Amy Gladeux, Gladieux.
French Canadian, if I ever saw one.
She is now just a game day employee. She went on to another full-time job. And then, in fact, they didn't even announce officially their relationship until just after she announced that she was leaving, because I don't think they wanted to deal with that in the front office. But as they said, once they made their relationship official, everyone was basically like, yeah. Like,
yeah, we knew.
I think that's kind of how it goes. You can't hide love. Love comes out.
Love
you can.
all. Love
conquers all.
You get anything from this podcast is that you cannot hide love.
That is right. And you can't hurry love either. You just have to wait. It doesn't come easy, and it's a game of give and take.
They didn't want to
I
deal
know
with
that's a lyric, but what is it? I want to say Huey Lewis, but I don't think that's true. What is
Sam wants to say that is Huey Lewis. Tyler, who do you want to say that?
I know it's way older than Huey Lewis, but I can't. Is that Gladys Knight and the Pips?
I think so, or the Supremes.
Oh, I'm thinking of The Power of Love. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Which is a Huey.
You can't hurry love. You just have to wait. Love don't come easy, 'cause it's a game of give and take. Hey. I should know who that is.
This podcast is now just a duet podcast. From here on, Ben and I are just going to sing. We're not talking about baseball or anything.
We take requests. Hit us up on Twitter at Tyler Mon at Ben's Biz. What song are we going to
What
do
are we going to
week?
sing next in episode 168? Tune in to find out. Ben, there's also a story. One of the most unique and creative identities in the Copa de la Diversión in 2018 is the Eugene Emeralds, who are the Monarcas de Eugene, and named after the monarch butterfly, which is this is a story and an identity that comes with a lot of symbolism and a lot of kind of powerful messaging behind it. The monarch butterfly has become a symbol of peaceful migration, especially in North America, because of what the actual butterfly does, but peaceful migration across borders for people and all that type of stuff. And Alan Benavides, the general manager of Eugene, put so much work into this identity for what Eugene's Copa identity would be. And tell us about this story, because this is a really fascinating. There are so many interesting stories that go along with these team names and logos and the uniforms and all that stuff, but this one might be the most unique and the most fascinating.
Well, yeah, when this was announced, along with the other 32 Copa identities, this one stood out to me, and I always kind of wanted to explore a little deeper. And the reason I'm writing a story now is because the Eugene Emeralds every Tuesday are playing as the Monarchs this season. And so their July 3rd game, they're not home on July 4th. So their July 3rd game was a Tuesday. And so they decided to have July 4th jerseys, but July 4th Monarchs jerseys. Monarchas jersey. So it's essentially the alternate identity of an alternate identity. It's the July 4th version of the alternate Monarch identities. And that's where we are in the world of minor league baseball. But it is a really cool identity. Alan Benavides is from Nicaragua. Is not from Nicaragua. His parents are Nicaraguan, first generation immigrants. So he, is really tied into this story. And I think he wanted to make a bit of a statement, in minor league baseball, you're not putting politics first. And it's, I think, a little sad where we are right now that a story is, to me, simple as celebrating American diversity and all the different countries come from, could be construed as political. But they wore jerseys, just with the Statue of Liberty, with the monarch butterfly elements, celebrating the patterns of migration of the monarch butterfly. Quotes from Emma Lazarus, the Colossus, that are inscribed at the base of the Statue of Liberty, and the story that so many of the players themselves come from other countries, and just kind of an overall celebration of the American cultural tableau that I think maybe sometimes we take for granted or don't think about, just how many races, colors, creeds are in this country, and continue to want to come here for a better life. And I think if Copa de la Diversion is celebrating the diversity of the fan base, or the extent to which it can become diversified, I think we really need to celebrate the stories of the people that we want to bring to the ballpark. And I think Eugene's really doing that well with the Monarch identity, and I'm writing a story about that right now.
And this is the halfway point of this kind of Copa de la Diversión
initiative, I guess. It's something we talked a lot about in the spring. As we kind of check in, you're honing in here on Eugene, but either in your travels or your talks with other teams, how are these first 3 months or so of these promotions gone? Do you feel like, we said if this was going to be successful, maybe it'll be expanded even deeper next year. Do you feel like we're kind of on that track?
I absolutely. I can't give you any official facts and figures, but anecdotally, and I've heard this again and again, is teams being surprised by how successful these alternate Spanish language identities are. And I think you're going to be seeing a lot more teams getting involved with it next year. The teams that are involved finding ways to improve on it. From a strictly dollars and cents standpoint, I think, I can't verify this, but I think a lot of teams are doing more merchandise sales with their Copa identities than they are with their just standard daily identities. So great revenue. But I think the main thing is obviously to diversify the fan base, because if you look at the demographics of any given minor league market and then look at the demographics of who's in the ballpark, it almost never matches up to the diversity of the neighborhood in question. So I think this is a great start on that. And you're seeing some teams draw their best crowds of the year on these nights. Albuquerque was a specific example. They drew something like 16,000 people for their first Copa night. The mariachi themed logo and team name, I'm blanking on the specifics of the name.
Mariachis de Nuevo Mexico.
Thank you, Tyler. I knew you'd be right on it.
I just love that they changed New Mexico in it to Nuevo. I think that's a really cool little tweak in there too.
Yeah, and there's so many cool elements. I think minor league baseball, deserves who spearheaded this. Minor league baseball, the head office proper, St. Petersburg, Florida. It was the individuals in the office who really spearheaded this, coordinated it, got the teams on board, and now you're seeing it really be successful. And I think it's only going to grow from here. And I think that's a great thing all around.
That's a really cool initiative, and I think by the end of the year, we're going to be surprised that people were surprised with the success of it. You know what I mean? And like you said, the demographics inside a ballpark don't necessarily reflect the demographics of a community. And so I think when it's all said and done and we realize, oh no, this is a community that was going to embrace this in large part, I don't think people should be surprised at how successful this is. Maybe surprised that it took this long for this to be such a wide-ranging initiative, and minor league baseball has done a really, really great job with it. And there could very well be a Copa team playing near you coming up soon, or one coming up in 2019 that's going to jump on board this program, which is a really neat one for minor league baseball in 2018 and heading into beyond. Benjamin Hill is on Twitter. He is at Ben's Biz. The blog is bensbiz.mlblogs.com. And hey, enjoy the rest of the day in that relaxed office, and let me know what songs you want to practice for next week.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be in touch, Tyler, and
we'll coordinate.
I want every day to be July 4th because it's so nice and pleasant here. Basically, all I want to do is just work with Sam every day. So let's work on that.
I don't blame you.
That's a good spin on that.
Yeah, but in the meantime, I just need like 7 cents. So if you could reach into your door there and look me up.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, guys.
Final segment of this week's episode of the show before the show. Thanks for tuning in to this week's edition. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and anywhere else you find podcasts. You can catch up with past episodes there and also at milb.com/podcast. And before we get out of here, as we do every week, we tell you what we're watching this weekend on milb.tv and into next week. Sam, what's on your mind for this week and next week?
Yeah, normally we do like weekend games to watch because those are the most immediate and when we assume you guys are listening to this. But save this one for next week. It'll be before our next show. We got to figure out how we're going to do the show next week. But next Wednesday, I will be at the Eastern League All-Star Game. As I mentioned, our fellow writer Kelsey Hennigan will also be there. And that Eastern League All-Star Game will be on MILB TV. So I won't be watching it on MILB TV. I will be watching it live and in color from the press box. But that'll be a lot of fun for all the names we mentioned before. Tebow will be there. You'll get to see his first All-Star appearance. But Bo Bichette, Brendan Rodgers, Brian Hayes, Bo Burrows, a lot of top 100 prospects we talked about before here on the show will all be competing against each other and on one screen. So that game starts at 7 p.m. Eastern time next Wednesday, July 11th. It should be a lot of fun, and hopefully, like I said, we'll have somebody from the All-Star Game as next week's podcast guest. So you'll get a little preview. Watch them on MILB TV and then hear from them later when the podcast goes up later next week.
We talked about International League All-Stars, I think, a little bit last week. The Pacific Coast League also released their All-Star roster, and the AAA All-Star game is coming up on the 11th as well, and you can find that at MILB.tv. There's some interesting names on that AAA roster on the Pacific Coast League side. Kyle Tucker is one of 3 top 100 prospects, along with Alex Verdugo and Luis Urias, who is a guy who just everywhere he goes puts up the exact same line, it seems like, in the Padres organization. He's with El Paso. Verdugo, of course, with Oklahoma City, and Kyle Tucker with Fresno. Jabari Blash will also be there. Jabari Blash owns approximately 79 home runs so far this year. No, like 22 home runs so far this year, but Jabari Blash has just been crushing the ball all over the place, and a guy who's formerly a ranked prospect, one of the very few prospects in minor league baseball who hails from the Virgin Islands. He is from St. Thomas, is Jabari Blash, and now 29 years old, but has gotten some time up in the major leagues this year with the Los Angeles Angels. Formerly Mariners prospect, was drafted by the Mariners back in 2010. That was in the Padres system for a little while, but he's been really fun to watch so far this year. And so the AAA All-Star Game coming up from Huntington Park in Columbus, Ohio, the host site of the All-Star Game this year. The top 100 prospects on the other side for the International League: Colby Allard, the Atlanta Braves pitching prospect, and the hometown guy who will get a chance to play in front of his fans in Columbus is Francisco Mejia, the catching prospect in the Cleveland organization, and member of that AAA Columbus roster right now, and he'll be on the International League side for the All-Star Game in AAA coming up on the 11th. And that'll do it for this week's episode of The Show Before the Show. Our biggest thanks to you for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of this holiday week. Hopefully you get some time off, get a chance to have some fun for the weekend, and we'll be back with you next week, wrapping up some All-Star games and getting you set for the start of the second half, really in its official capacity. I guess it's already underway, but once we get out of the All-Star breaks is really when it starts kicking into high gear for second half playoff races and all that type of stuff. And we'll be back to get you all ready for it coming next week. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you then.